Today, let's check out real-life trading examples of how to trade HEIKIN ASHI. In our last video, we learned every secret of HEIKIN ASHI with one of the best HEIKIN ASHI trading strategies. Now, we will go over examples from Bitcoin to Tesla stock. We will cover many winning trades, plus I'll show you the failures and risks. Hello friends, hope you're doing great. As I promised, this video is all about examples of my previous HEIKIN ASHI trading technique. I've been day and swing trading cryptocurrencies and US stocks for so long, so I'll cover examples like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tesla and AMD. If you are ready, let's start. Let's start with a quick recap. If you have watched my technical video recently, please skip this chapter. As you remember, there are 3 steps to trade HEIKIN ASHI. Very simple and efficient. Step 1. Confirm EMA 50. Well, I need the price to be above EMA 50. Why? Because the 50 moving average is kind of a gold standard for understanding momentum. Step 2. Confirm stochastic RSI. I've always enjoyed using stoch RSI. I find it quite effective for determining better entries. What I look at is that I want the stoch RSI below 50 and a recent crossover. This gives me an extra layer of comfort before opening a new position. Step 3. Confirm entries. If you have subscribed to my channel and watched my videos, I have one unbreakable rule while trading. Never enter a trade before a confirmation. This is so critical. Now, if I use HEIKIN ASHI, I wait for a pullback and then watch for the first green candle with shaved bottom, no tail at all. Okay, let's continue with examples. Because I trade Bitcoin futures daily, almost every day, let's start with it. I want to go step by step as usual, because I know the comfort of step-by-step trading. I'm looking at 4 hours chart for swing trades. In this example, as you can see, there were 2 clear entries. Let's go over them. Step 1. Confirm EMA 50. As you can see on the chart, the Bitcoin price jumped at the beginning of October and gives us around 1 month uptrending momentum. So our step 1 is confirmed for all of October. In step 2, as usual, I look for recent stoch RSI crossover below 50 line. Why do I look for crossovers below 50? Because it generally confirms a recent pullback, and a reaction always comes after a pullback. As you can see, there are many crossovers below 50, but these 2 are quite significant. Step 3. Now, can you notice the pullbacks in these examples? Let me draw it. I enjoy pullbacks before entering a position because jumping a constant pump is extremely risky. Now, these green candles with shaved bottoms and no shadows are my entries. My stop loss is below the pullback usually. And take profit order is at 2R. If you look at the charts closely, you will notice many more examples like this one. This strategy is not perfect as any other strategy, but it's quite effective. Please check out your charts at 1 hour, 4 hours and 1 day time frames, and you'll see many profitable trading opportunities. My second example is Ethereum, because after the Bitcoin, I trade Ethereum futures the most. Don't worry, after this, I'll cover Tesla and AMD stocks, because I also trade their options a lot. This strategy fairly works well with a 4 hours time interval, even though you will be stopped out here and then. But if you can manage your risks, you will most likely make money in the long run. Now, if we look at the chart, our price hovered above EMA 50 for a long period. If the price stays over EMA 50 longer, it's better for us, because this means that general momentum is strong and people are interested in that financial security. To understand possible entry opportunities, please check the recent stoch RSI crossovers under the 50 line. One important thing, we need a recent crossover. you do not enter a trade before the crossover or at the moment of the crossover. I need to see that crossover clearly. If you look at the chart, we have like 7-8 clear crossovers below the 50 line. Let's confirm the entry. Now, I've spotted 7 clear entry opportunities in this chart. Price over 50 EMA. Recent clear stock RSI crossovers. Green candles with shaved bottom without any tail. And as you can see on the chart, 5 out of 7 trades were successful and 2 of them failed. With a proper stop loss and risk management, you can make money with this HEIKIN ASHI trading technique. However, as I always say, confirm your entries and manage your risks. This is the only golden key to have a certain success and survive in the trading world. Let's check out Tesla, one of the most popular stocks of the last year, and heaven for option traders like me. Okay, now, we are looking at a daily chart. When I trade stocks, the first thing I look for is weekly and daily charts before opening any position in any time frame. I need to get the feeling of the recent momentum. As you can see, Tesla stock price hovered above the EMA 50 line since the summer. I'm getting the general uptrending vibe from the stock. In step 2, I look at stock RSI crossover under 50. Now, there are a couple of significant crossovers that grabbed my attention. If stock RSI crossover happens at deeper levels, such as 20 or 30, it's even better. If it's too close to 50, our risks increase. Confirming entries is quite clear. As usual, after the obvious pullbacks, the first green candle without a tail. As you can see on the chart, we have 2 clear entries. This candlestick and this candlestick. As usual, I place my stop loss order at the bottom of the pullback. Now, I can take the risks because I'm using 1 day, 4 hours or 1 hour time frames mostly. If you're using lower time frames like 15 minutes or 5 minutes, you should consider much tighter stop losses. So, if you are day trading or scalping, you should have superb emotional control and risk management skills. Otherwise, you will lose your money. This is why I tell everyone, please start with swing trading in daily or weekly charts, sharpen your skills, and give yourself time to learn, experience, practice, and think. Because once you day trade or scalp, you have almost no time to think. You should be like a robot, act and react so quickly. Okay, now I'm looking at AMD. As you can see, if you catch a rally with this strategy, you can multiply your capital with options trading. What is the golden key that I teach all the time? Cut your losses quickly, let your winners run as much as you can. Trading is not about strategies, price, or economy. It is a simple game of emotions, controlling your risks and your capital. You can make money with a 20% winning rate if you can control your losses and winners. So AMD, another one of my favorites for day and swing trading. Prices above EMA 50 since the summer. A great indication for uptrending momentum. Now, I'm looking at stock RSI crossovers. If you notice, there are 2 clear crossovers. These crossovers are in deep levels like 10 and very clear. And if you notice, the wave of stock RSI is extremely smooth. There is no noise. Finally, I'm looking for possible entries. Green candlesticks with shaved bottoms. As you can see, the first rally was extreme. Oh, look at that, almost 50%. It's incredible. The second rally was a bit shorter. This could be a quick hit and run trade in a week. Now, about taking profits with HEIKIN ASHI. There are many ways to take profits. You can use 1R to 2R ratio. You can use the ATR indicator. Or you may wait for the first red candle to take your profit or fully exit from the position. Choosing your take profit depends on you and your risk appetite. You cannot take the same risk with $1,000 and $100,000. Okay folks, I hope this video was useful to you. I tried to teach you everything I know and experienced, so you will not make so many mistakes like in my beginner years. If you really enjoyed the video and do not want to miss this type of videos, please subscribe to the channel. I'll work even harder to bring you much better quality content. Please take care and see you soon.